www.wadr.org. WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Abuja. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. At least 5 arrested outside Gambia's National Audit Office as police break gala press conference with tear gas.
What is more dictatorial than throwing tear gas on people? What is more dictatorial that the government can send police officers to go to the Auditor General office and forcefully remove them?
The government doesn't want to abide by the rule of law. The action to remove the Auditor General is completely unconstitutional and illegal.
Nigerian military eliminates top terrorist commanders in Northeast operation. Open Society Foundation criticized African government's failure to deliver a democratic promise.
You could not be a member of parliament, or if you don't have, wealthy sponsors, you could not compete and expect, to represent the people. So that means that elections have become a business, and this hinders, political participation.
An Ivorian opposition party, PPACI, launches a nationwide protest over rejection of Laurent Gbagbo's presidential candidacy. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
WADR. You can listen to us on 94.9 FM in Dakar through our website www.wadr.org.
We're glad you've joined our broadcast. We begin this bulletin in the Gambia, where at least 5 people were arrested on Monday outside the National Audit Office during a planned press conference by the group Gambians Against Looted Assets Gala. The group intended to address the forceful removal of Auditor General Modou Cissé from office by police. However, law enforcement used tear gas to disperse the gathering. Just before being taken away by police, Gala spokesperson Omar Saibo Kamara was granting an interview to a local media online. Here is what he said moments before taking into custody.
We are not a lawless state, and in the rule of law, there is a whole framework, a roadmap, a rule of law roadmap that the Ministry of Justice cannot implement it. And one of the issues is this: training police officers professionally and ethically on how to handle their duties, crack down on people, and do what they want. But the ball is in our court. It's either we accept to be ruled by a man that doesn't value us and our lives and our progress, or we take charge of this country. We need to not do that. Because at the end of the day, if this continues, all what they are doing is to kill accountability and transparency. We are in dictatorship. We are not going back to dictatorship. What is more dictatorial than arresting people for a press conference and putting them behind bars? What is more dictatorial than throwing tear gas on people? I nearly died today, and many other people. What is more dictatorial that the government can send police officers to go to the Auditor General office and forcefully remove them? That is the highest of dictatorship.
Well, Omar Saibo Kamara is a spokesperson for Gambians Against Looted Assets Gala. Meanwhile, prominent human rights activist Madi Jabati has condemned the arrest of youth activists detained on Monday while planning a press conference to protest the police-led removal of Auditor General Modou Cissé. Speaking after the incident, Jabati accused the government of showing blatant disregard for the rule of law, a concern he says reflects a broader erosion of democratic principles in the country.
5 people were arrested, 5 young men, and they are taken at the Koto police station. As well, I understand they are detained. At the police, their statements were taken and charged for nuisance and unlawful assembly. Apparently, the government doesn't want to abide by the rule of law, and it is very obvious that the action, by the president to remove the Auditor General is completely unconstitutional and illegal, and so the prevalence of corruption, inefficiency, and so on in the public sector is such that citizens, particularly young people, have taken up their constitutional rights to protest this illegalities and constitutional actions and misconduct.
We'll expect more of that interview on the arrest of youths and forceful removal of Auditor General of the Gambia with the human rights activist Mahdi Jabate in the second half of the news. Elsewhere, Open Society Foundation, OSIWA, is raising an alarm over widening gaps between democratic governance and the daily realities of citizens in Africa. This was highlighted in OSIWA's latest report titled The Nexus Between Democratic Governance and Economic Justice, launched in Accra, Ghana on Monday, September 15, 2025. The report reveals that most governments on the continent are failing to translate democratic promises into tangible development, urging leaders to chart a new path that links democracy to progress in people's lives. Well, Nadi Ditete reports from Accra.
The Open Society Foundations has called for urgent reforms to ensure Africa's democracies deliver real progress for citizens. Launching its latest research, The Nexus Between Democratic Governance and Economic Justice, the foundation reveals that, despite holding regular elections, many African states remain trapped in what experts call choiceless democracies. Author of the report, economist Dr. Indongo Samba Sila, explained that the high cost of politics is locking ordinary citizens out of leadership.
If you are not wealthy, you could not be a member of parliament. Or if you don't have, wealthy sponsors, you could not compete and expect, to represent the people. So that means that elections have become a business, and this hinders, political participation.
Does it equally encourage corruption?
Yes.
The report also highlights the impact of decades of neoliberal economic policies, often imposed by international lenders, which Dr. Sila says has stifled true transformation.
The policies, heavy taxation, population, just doing economic policy just to repay the foreign debt, etc.
Dr. Sila is urging African leaders to chart a new path that links democracy to development, ensuring policies directly improve lives.
We need to have a conversation on democracy and development. We say that these are not two antithetical concepts. Democracy has to go hand in hand in development, and vice versa. So we have to study the material conditions needed to have democracy that brings development, and development that is not authoritarian.
He concluded that democracy and development should not be treated as separate goals, but as inseparable pillars of Africa's culture. The report is expected to spark broader conversations on how to rebuild trust in Africa's democratic systems. For WDR, Nadiri Tete, Accra.
While still in Ghana, the Catholic Bishops' Conference has urged President John Mahama to declare a state of emergency over illegal mining on Galamsey. In a statement, the bishops condemned the pollution of rivers like the Pra and Birim with mercury and toxic waste and warned of severe consequences for farmers and families if action is not taken. They accused political, traditional and security leaders of shielding illegal miners and expressed disappointment over Mahama's refusal to declare a state of emergency during his September 10 media appearance. The bishops say emergency measures would help restore affected areas, dismantle criminal networks and tackle corruption in the mining sector.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Well, from Ghana, let's head to Nigeria, where the Nigerian army says it has killed at least 8 figures of the Islamic State of West African province ISWAP, including several top field commanders in the northeast region. This incident is the latest reminder of the ongoing conflict that has devastated communities in the Lake Chad Basin for over a decade, resulting in widespread destruction, displacement, and loss of economic stability. WDR's Usman Omar reports from Maiduguri.
The clash occurred on Monday morning along the Maiduguri-Baga Highway in Borno State when ISWAP fighters ambushed troops near Garingiwa, close to Cross Kawa. Military sources informed WADR that the soldiers fought back, killing 8 insurgents, including 2 field commanders known as Munzirs and a sector leader referred to as Qaid. The slain leaders have been identified as Modu Dogo, another unnamed commander, and Abu Aisha from Tumbun Mota, 14 motorcycles were recovered from the fleeing fighters. The recent battle is part of an ongoing conflict that has shaped the fate of Nigeria's northeast since 2009. What began as an insurgency by Boko Haram has now evolved into a prolonged regional crisis, later splintering into factions such as ISWAP, which has aligned itself with the so-called Islamic State. For millions of people in Borno, Yobe and Adamawa State, the consequences of the war have been devastating. The United Nations estimates that over 350,000 lives have been lost, both directly and indirectly, while more than 2 million people remain displaced, with many living in camps that lack access to basic services. The economic impact has also been severe, as farming and fishing, once the lifeline of the communities around Lake Chad, have been disrupted, pushing families into poverty. While the death of the commanders may represent a tactical victory for the Nigerian troops, peace and stability remain elusive for the communities in the northeast. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Meanwhile, in the central Sahel state of Burkina Faso, dozens of civilians have been killed in separate attacks by jihadist groups in the northern region since May 2025. A recent report from Human Rights Watch released on Monday highlights this alarming situation. The report attributes the violence to the Al-Qaeda-linked group Jenim and the Islamic State in the Sahel province, ISL. Human Rights Watch asserts that these attacks violate international humanitarian law and may constitute war crimes. Christopher Atichi completes the story.
According to Human Rights Watch, the Al-Qaeda affiliate Jenim attacked the town of Jibo in May and the village of Yoba in early August, resulting in the death of 40 civilians. Jenim claimed responsibility for the attack on Jibo on May 11, in which hundreds of fighters overran a military base, seized weapons, and killed dozens of soldiers. The fighters entered several neighborhoods, executed at least 26 civilians, and set fire to shops and health facilities. In July, the Islamic State group targeted a civilian convoy transporting humanitarian aid to the besieged town of Gurum Gurum, killing at least 9 civilians. Additionally, the Burkina Faso military has been accused of targeting civilians. The report indicates that in March this year, Burkina Faso government forces killed at least 100 civilians during counter-terrorism operations in the western part of the country. Human Rights Watch says these attacks violated international humanitarian law and constituted apparent war crimes. For almost 3 years, Burkina Faso has been ruled by a military junta under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who has pledged to eliminate violence and restore security. Yet, deadly attacks continue to plague the nation. As part of its recommendations, the Human Rights Watch NGO urges the authorities to enhance protection for all at-risk civilians, investigate abuses, including those committed by the military and allied militias, and ensure fair prosecution of those responsible. Human Rights Watch also calls on the African Union to pressure Burkina Faso to effectively respond to these ongoing abuses.
Christopher Atichu with that report. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. At least 5 arrested outside Gambia's National Audit Office as police break up gala press conference with tear gas. Nigerian military eliminates top terrorist commanders in Northeast operation. Open Society Foundations criticizes African government's failures to deliver on democratic promises. And Ivorian opposition party PPACI launches a nationwide protest over rejection of Laurent Gbagbo's presidential candidacy. Still ahead, we have press review, guest interview, and sport news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now to some political issues. We begin in Guinea, where the opposition party Union of Democratic Forces of Guinea UFDG is urging its supporters to boycott the upcoming referendum scheduled for September 21, 2025. On Monday, UFDG President Cellou Dalein Diallo stated that the draft of the new constitution does not reflect the will of the Guinean people. The former Prime Minister argues that the proposed constitution is designed to preserve the military's hold on power. It has a details in this report.
In one of his rare address to his supporters from exile, opposition leader Cellou Dalein Diallo calls on his supporters to boycott the September 21 referendum. According to the former Prime Minister, participating in the vote will be validating a draft new constitution that threatens democracy in Guinea and distracts the country from the deep aspirations of its citizens.
The UFDG will not participate in this referendum masquerade intended to facilitate the commission of perjury and to legitimize a coup d'etat. We invite all Guineans to stay home on September 21 and to abstain from voting, because even if you vote no, your vote will be counted as yes. Therefore, do not associate yourselves with this theft of the votes of Guineans.
The president of the UFDG party also calls on Guineans to oppose by all peaceful means what he considers to be a siege of power by the ruling military.
We have always extended our hand to dialogue to give all the chances to peace, but our patience has been taken for weakness. Now there is no more room for hesitation. We must defend our rights and regain our freedoms. The time has come. Guinea is our common home, our common good.
Cellou Dalein Diallo's statement comes as his party experiences an internal rift. Several former officials of the main opposition political party have joined the ruling military government. They are campaigning for a yes vote in the referendum set to take place on September 21, 2025.
A report from WDR's Conakry correspondent General Alpha Ibrahim Balde, voiced by Abdullahi Hassan. Still on politics, but in Cote d'Ivoire, the opposition party PPACI is taking a significant step in its protest campaign against the rejection of Laurent Gbagbo's presidential candidacy. The party of the former president announced that it is filing protest motion in each of the country's prefectures. This move is seen as an initial step in the PPCI's campaign against the denial of Gbagbo's candidacy. Observers believe that this action could be beginning of a series of protests that may culminate in demonstrations on various streets in Cote d'Ivoire. Augustine Coley reports.
After verbally denouncing the rejection of Laurent Gbagbo's candidacy for the October presidential election, the PPACI is continuing a series of protests. The opposition party has asked all of its branches to file protest motions in the various prefectures of the country. PPACI's objective is to reaffirm its opposition to the exclusion of its leader, Laurent Gbagbo, from the presidential race, but above all, to oppose a fourth-term candidacy by President Alassane Ouattara, which it deems unconstitutional. This instruction was followed in the majority of prefectures, even if some delegations were turned away. The PPACI hopes that the prefectures will pass the information on to the Ministry of the Interior, which will in turn inform the presidency of the situation. Observers say this first action is part of a series that could end in street protests across Côte d'Ivoire. As a reminder, a few weeks ago, the PPACI mobilized in Abidjan to demand an inclusive presidential election and denounce President Ouattara's fourth candidacy. The demonstration brought together thousands of people. Since its recent meeting with several opposition leaders in Abidjan, former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo has not commented on the action his party plans to take to ensure its participation in the presidential election. Gbagbo's candidacy, like several other opposition leaders, was rejected by the Constitutional Council. With the presidential election just weeks away, political tension continues to rise in Côte d'Ivoire. The election campaign is scheduled to officially open on Friday, October 10.
Augustine Coley with the details of Marcel Addiston Blaze report from Abidjan. Elsewhere in Liberia, an industrial oxygen tank explosion at the Mira Gas Company facility in the capital Monrovia resulted in several injuries. The explosion occurred late Monday afternoon while workers were carrying out their regular task. Both community residents and company employees are raising health concerns regarding the incident, emphasizing the need for improved safety measures at the facility. WDR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
Initial reports from the incident scene revealed discrepancies in the number of injuries reported. Edwin Tisdale, Deputy Director of Operations at the Liberia National Fire Service, stated that 7 individuals were injured and later taken to the John F. Kennedy Memorial Hospital for medical treatment.
Some person who got wounded, we're trying to verify the information by going to the hospital. So what we have not gotten is that we have not seen any dead body.
However, an employee from the Mara Gas Company on site reported that 16 injured workers were initially taken to the Mawa Clinic in Vata near Monrovia before being transferred to JFK Hospital. The Environmental Protection Agency has announced that it will launch a full-scale investigation into the incident and will provide updates to the public soon.
Because of safety reasons, God forbid if there were, I'm saying if there were any casualty, we will not want additional casualty. So it is for your own good, and it is the operators who should be telling us what led to the explosion. So we are doing investigation, and we have not concluded the preliminary investigation to provide the press the necessary information. We will provide you information when we have concluded.
This incident has sparked a broader debate regarding industrial safety standards and enforcement in Liberia. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Well, let's remain in Nigeria and, of course, rejoin our Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker for the newspaper review from Liberia.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Hello and welcome. This edition begins with a front page Africa newspaper, and these are stories taking the lead on front page Africa newspaper. Scary and unfortunate. Tanker explosion at Mara Oxygen Facility injures Sarah. Victims hospitalized as fire service police probe incident. This incident occurred on yesterday, an industrial site in Liberia that produces gas for cooking. We received information that there was an explosion at the site. Those from the fire service put the number at 6. But some of the workers who managed to get out said at least 16 persons were first taken to the hospital. The EPA says investigation is on its way. The next stop is the Independent newspaper. Tiawan Gongolo sees the danger, finds at outsourcing government's data collection. Exchange rate crisis unresolved as market forces entrapped clients. And an editorial on the Independent newspaper says, settle the debts owed the media. That does it for the Independent newspaper. Our next and last stop is the Inquirer newspaper, volume 34, number 165. Calls for gender equality intensifies as regional workshop on women in leadership kicks off. We are homeless. Cardwell residents decry unlawful demolition of properties. And First Lady Bouaka rallies global partners calls for bold action on health equity. That does it for this edition of Press Review from Monrovia. Thanks so kindly for listening.
Thank you very much, our Liberia correspondent Abraham Parker with the newspaper review from Liberia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
In our guest interview segment, we return to the Gambia, where at least 5 people were arrested on Monday outside the National Audit Office during a planned press conference by the youth group Gambians Against Looted Assets or Gala. The gathering was meant to protest the police-led removal of Auditor General Modusisi, but it was forcefully broken up with tear gas. Among those detained was Gala spokesperson Omar Saibo Kamara, who was arrested while speaking to the media. To help us analyze the latest developments and to discuss what he sees as growing concern over transparency and the government's disregard for rule of law, we are joined now by our guest and human rights advocate, Mahdi Jabate.
5 people were arrested, 5 young men, and taken up to Koto police station. That's why I understand they are detained.
Do we know whether they've been charged?
Yes, the police, their statements were taken and charged for nuisance and unlawful assembly.
What is your reaction to this? It's becoming an everyday life now. Every now and then, young people will be arrested just for gathering. It's becoming a worrying trend in the Gambia.
Yes, because apparently the government doesn't want to abide by the rule of law. And it is very obvious that the action, by the president to remove the Auditor General is completely unconstitutional and illegal. And so the prevalence of corruption, inefficiency, and so on in the public sector is such that citizens, particularly young people, have taken up their constitutional right to protest these illegalities and constitutional, actions and misconduct. So this is what is unfolding 9 years after the end of the dictatorship, which was characterized by human rights violations and massive corruption, only to realize that 9 years later, the incidence of corruption has become widespread. And where there is corruption, what follows is violations, because people will stand up against corruption to protest, to express themselves. And in that instance, the police are usually weaponized, clamp down on peaceful citizens assembling, subjecting them to arrest, detention, torture, and so on, including the use of tear gas. So this is what we are seeing unfolding in the Gambia, which is really concerning.
Tell us a little bit about the legality, whether the president has the power to forcefully remove an Auditor General of the Gambia.
In the first place, it is not a promotion. You get promoted in an institution in which you work to be moved from one level to another. So the position, the National Audit Office and the ministry are completely different. So Auditor General is not promoted to be a minister or any other position. The law provides that the Auditor General serves a tenure of 9 years and can only be removed, by his own resignation or maybe death, or reaching a retirement age. But when the president wants to remove an Auditor General, the Constitution and the National Audit Office Act provides that it has to be on two conditions: on a matter of health, where the health of the Auditor General is such that he cannot perform his functions, or in the case of incompetence or misconduct, committed by the Auditor General. But in this case, the president has never said the Auditor General is sick or is incompetent. Rather, he just woke up one morning to say, I am removing you from the position of Auditor General to take you to be a minister. That is not grounds for the removal of an Auditor General. You cannot redeploy the Auditor General whatsoever. That is not provided in the law, in the Constitution and the National Audit Office Act. So the actions of the president are totally unconstitutional and illegal, and that must be challenged.
Why is the government so bent on removing Mr. Sisi as the Auditor General of the Gambia?
So that is the multi-million-dollar question. There are speculations that because the Auditor General, they wanted the Auditor General to sign up to certain changes in the government's accounts, which the Auditor General is not amenable to, and so on, that the Auditor General wanted to audit certain institutions. Or so, what can reasonably think would be that indeed the Auditor General is either being prevented from doing something or is being asked to do something which is not right, which he doesn't want to do. We saw the reports about the IEC, which was indeed damning. There are reports about the Edward Francis Moore Teaching Hospital and, other reports as well. Practically all the reports from the National Audit Office about government institutions are damning.
Well, Mahdi Jabate is a human rights advocate. Well, in sports, the UEFA Champions League returns today, and of course, we have a lot of African stars taking action because we have a lot of them. But before that, let's talk about Ghanaian international Thomas Partey, who will, of course, be playing in the Champions League, but with some developments. Tell us about it, Christopher.
Yes, and so his coach is actually expressing optimism that Thomas Partey is ready to face Tottenham in tonight's Champions League clash against his counterpart, Mohamed Kudus of Tottenham Hotspurs, and a 32-year-old Ghanaian forward, midfielder formerly of Arsenal, who currently faces 5 counts of rape and 1 of sexual assault in relating to alleged incident between 2021 and 2022. Partey already denies charges, and his lawyers are eager to clear his name. But of course, as you rightly said, today is when some of the Champions League matches will be going on, and then Arsenal will be taking on Atletico Bilbao, and also would see Juventus be in action against Dortmund. And as we said early on, Tottenham Hotspur will be taking on Villarreal, and Real Madrid would also face Marseille in tonight's encounter as well. We'll also get to see some actions tomorrow where Chelsea will be taking on Bayern Munich, where Nicolas Jackson will be facing on his former club.
Of course, but today we have the likes of Matar Sarr, Mohamed Kudus all taking action in the UEFA Champions League. Thank you very much, Christopher, with the sport news. Well, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Fali Luso and Ismaila Kamara for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X and Instagram at WDR English, and on Facebook, WDR English Service. I am Sankula Janko. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and